Surrendering our lives radically to Jesus is the most important thing that you and I will ever do. And yet it may also be the most difficult thing that you and I will ever do. Surrendering means drowning in the will of God so that He gets His way in every choice that we make throughout our day. That goes radically against our very sinful, selfish natures. For us, it is impossible. That is why God has to do it. Only God can do it, but you and I have to let Him. I am speaking to you this morning from Bangkok, which is the capital and most populous city in Thailand with over 8 million inhabitants. I'm here to share a week of revival with an English-speaking church, and what a privilege it is for me to be here. This morning I'd like to talk a little bit about how, in practical terms, we can surrender our lives to Jesus. You know, Ellen White says that self-surrender is the substance of the teachings of Christ. Self-surrender is the substance of the teachings of Christ. And yet for most of my life, I misunderstood this critical concept so terribly. Perhaps the most important thing that you and I need to know about surrender is how to do it. Surrendering our life to Jesus conceptually is fairly easy. All we have to do is ask for it. But when we ask for it, and here's the rub, when we ask for it, we have to really, really want it. We have to be willing to let God do whatever it takes to accomplish the surrender in our lives. We must be able to say with the psalmist, "Who have I in heaven but you, and besides you I desire nothing on earth." That sounds good, but you and I are not strong enough to even truly desire surrender. We are not strong enough to fight ourselves. But we do have the power of choice. And with that power of choice, we can say to God, "Lord, I understand that surrender is so important. I know I need it, but I don't want it. I can't do it. But Lord, I'm willing to be made willing. Lord, I'm willing to be made willing." Ellen White tells us that when the will of God, with the will of man, cooperates with the will of God, it becomes omnipotent. It is okay to say to God, "Lord, I need surrender, but I just don't want to." He knows that by nature we can say nothing else. By nature we fight surrender. We gasp and gurgle and sputter as He tries to drown us in His will. But we can say, "Lord, I'm willing to be made willing." And that is a prayer that He will answer. For it is God who is at work in us, both to will and to do His good pleasure. Ultimately, dying in the arms of Jesus is a decision that you and I have to make personally. But we don't have to make it on our own power. God is willing and able and eager to help us to make that choice. Only God can do it, but you and I have to let Him. When the will of man cooperates with the will of God, it becomes omnipotent.